Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and I have a massive book haul to share with you today. I'm also going to reveal the price of what I paid for at the end of this video in case you're interested. Now, we are purchasing these materials using educational funding through our charter school. We homeschool through a charter school, and each family is allocated a certain amount of money that you can use towards educational material, and this year I used a bulk of it in order to purchase these books. Okay, so I've divided all of the books into 3 different piles. I've got the picture books, the Waldorf books, and all the other books. And what I'm going to do is go through each of these piles. And if you are just interested in a particular type of book, then you can just jump to that part in the video and you can see minute markers on the screen right now. And if you go down into the description box, you can click on those minute markers and it will jump right to that part in the video. We're going to go through this stack of books first. This series is by Charles Kovacs. Now, Charles Kovacs was a Waldorf teacher in Scotland, and he's since passed away, but his notes on his main lessons have been compiled into these books. Now, we already started with geology and astronomy, and this book, along with a few others, were part of a recent book haul that was actually part of this entire book haul, but the orders got split up because I needed this book right away since we were doing our mineralogy unit. And so this was ordered a little bit before the rest of these, but when I reveal the price at the end of this video, it actually includes all of those books. And if you want to see that previous haul, I've linked that video down in the description box below. So we've already started going through this book of geology and astronomy, and we're in the geology section, but our astronomy unit follows, so we're going to be using this book for that as well. What I really like about these books so far is that the chapters are short, they're really easy to read, they're perfect for gathering information on how to present a Waldorf lesson, or on occasion what I'll do is I'll just read these chapters aloud to my students as part of our lesson, as part of our read alouds. And they're written in a way that it makes you feel like you're in a classroom listening to a lecture, but not a boring lecture. I really like the way that they are written. I really like the information and how it's delivered. I feel like it's really different than what you would typically expect from a geology unit. In fact, I think all of the Waldorf lessons, they're presented in a really unique way so that you are drawn into the lesson in a way that's imaginative but also creative, and then it still is able to deliver all of the scientific content or the historical content, whatever main lesson you're doing, but its avenue into that information I feel is really different and unique. All right, so let me show you the titles that we got and when we plan to use them, because they're not all for this year. So The Human Being and the Animal World, this is for the 4th grade, I believe, for the man and animal unit, and it's one of my absolute favorite units. Well, actually, I have a lot of favorite units, but this one I really, really like the way that it's presented. Super unique, really connects with the student or the child. And so this will work really great if you do not have a Waldorf curriculum. But I'll have to say that I always have additional resources when I'm putting together our main lesson blocks or when I'm putting together our unit studies. So I'm not sure that this would be sufficient on its own, but I would definitely start with this and then draw other resources if you needed it. Muscles and Bones, this goes with the anatomy unit that I believe is in 7th grade. We've done 2 anatomy units so far. We've been homeschooling for a really long time, so we cycle through these subject areas every 3 to 4 years or so. And I really haven't been pleased with the way that I've presented anatomy, especially my most recent unit that we went through. So I'm excited to see if this will help us achieve like a better understanding of the subject area, and hopefully it's more inspiring for my children. Norse mythology, we already did Norse mythology a couple of years ago. We're ready to circle back to it pretty soon. And this would definitely help because it has so many stories. This would definitely help if you want to use this as your only resource. But again, I would recommend adding more to it when you're putting together a unit. And Norse mythology, I believe, is 4th grade, if I'm not mistaken. Age of Revolution and Age of Discovery. So these would be for about 7th or 8th grade. So great resource to put together your unit. So both of these, I think 7th and 8th grade. Ancient Greece, I believe, is for 5th and 6th grade, it's, I believe, covered twice as mythology in one year and then history, or maybe that was Roman history, where it's mythology one year and then history the following year. And this, again, you can just kind of see the chapters are pretty short. It goes through a lot of different subject or topic areas, and you can also see the size of the book. I think it's, and they retail for under $20. I want to say maybe about $16. Botany is for 5th grade, and by 5th grade, on all the grades that I'm saying, it's really 5th year, and so it tends to be about a year behind traditional school, in my opinion, because you start 1st grade at around 7, so 5th graders, I think, are around 11 years old. 10 to 11, and some, the age range for my Waldorf curriculum, it actually gives a 2-year block age range for each grade, so that depending on your child's development, it can, your child can fit into the grades a little bit different than other children. So botany is another one of my favorite main lesson blocks, and we've done that one a few times already. Ancient Rome, this would be for, I believe, 6th grade, 5th or 6th grade. And a little bit larger than the other ones. Okay, so let me go through these last books here. Geometry lessons in the Waldorf school. This would be really great if you are looking to try your hand at a geometry unit and do it in the Waldorf way, which is really different. I know I keep saying it's really different, but it really is, especially for geometry. Geometry is introduced in the 5th year, so 5th grade, and it has no proofs, no theorems, no math until about midway through the unit, and the math is very minimal. It's really about exploring shapes, how they are constructed, and how they relate to other shapes. And of course, it's done in a really beautiful manner, and you can see all of these beautiful drawings with the shapes. And I really, really love the presentation of geometry in the Waldorf school. And you can see that I've got a couple of different geometry resources here as well. So when we're circling back to geometry again this year. We did it recently, but it's done in 5th grade and in 6th grade. So drawing geometric solids, and this would be fantastic, especially for a teacher if you're looking to draw these on your chalkboard for your students. And of course, you could do this with color pencil and paper. And then similar to this one, you have this one, which I feel is more like a workbook. It takes you step by step how to construct these different images. And then what's really fantastic is when you actually get to color them in, which is, I think, one of the funner parts of the lesson, when you get to see the image come alive through color, because depending on how you color this, different layers of the image will start to come through. I have another workbook here, Compass Drawings, and I don't actually think that this was part of the Waldorf material that I got, but again, this one goes through step by step how to construct these different images. Yeah, this would be really helpful if this is a new topic area for you. All right, so another Waldorf book. This is Mathematics in Nature, Space, and Time. And then a lot of these ones here are going to relate to the same subject area. We finished an ocean main lesson block, and in it there were some geometry lessons that related to the spirals that you find in nature, and more specifically in shells. And I found that as I was teaching that, I was not understanding it well enough for me to teach it, and so I needed additional resources so that I could educate myself before presenting those lessons to my children. And so I ended up getting quite a few different resources. It's really hard to tell with books online when you can't really thumb through them and look through them and see, really what they are. And so I ended up getting a variety of books, and these will be more resource materials for me. Although I have to say that I've got a series of these 3 books here. They're super beautiful. They're small. They seem like they are easy to read. Like each section is just on one different topic area, and so it moves through these sections pretty quickly. So I anticipate that it's possible that my son and I, he's 11, might want to just sit down and read through this, and maybe he will read this on his own. So I have the golden section, I have sacred geometry, And we have ruler and compass. So this is not something that we will go through cover to cover. This will definitely be more of a resource guide. We also have Quadrivium. This is the 4 classical liberal arts of number, geometry, music, and cosmology. And so there's a lot of similarity between this book and the previous 3 that you saw. And this one just has so much. You could pull different sections depending on the main lesson that you're doing. And we have our astronomy unit coming up. And so this is going to be a great resource for those lessons that are coming up. And you can see that there are quite a few sections on astronomy. All right, we also have drawing geometry, and this is similar to the other books that we got. So this is a bit of repeat information, and I'm not sure which one is going to be, or which one of the resources is going to work well. And so we are able to get multiple resources, and then either one particular book will work really well and we'll just use that one, or we will just draw from different ones. To find which one worked best, I recommend checking the review videos that I post at the end of all of our main lesson blocks and our unit studies, because that way you'll get a review of these books, because I won't have one massive review of all of these books the way I'm having this massive haul. The review is going to be broken up in parts, and it's going to be at the end of all of our units. So when we finish our geometry unit, you'll be able to see how these books worked out. We also have Number Stories of Long Ago. I'm really excited about this book. I really hope that this is the kind of story that has math involved, but also introduces a concept, and hopefully it's a nice way. Oh, my stack of books just fell down. And I hope that it's a way to be an introduction to whatever lesson we're doing for that day, the content that we're doing that day. All right, we have 2 more books here. We have A Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe, The Mathematical Archetypes of Nature, Art, and Science, A Voyage from 1 to 10. It's a long title. So this is another resource material that I will be using to just gather information for the different subject areas that we're going to do. And this is not just for geometry. Like there was something with like King Tut's tomb and his mask, and we already did our ancient Egypt unit, but having a resource like this allows you to incorporate math into those other subject areas that you might not be able to see on your own, but a book like this will really help you identify those opportunities. All right, we also have Sacred Geometry, Deciphering the Code, and I like this one because of all the pretty pictures. I find that I'm a pretty visual person, and so having pictures like this really helps me understand the content a little bit better. All right, so let's move on to our next stack, which is probably the biggest one, and it is all of the picture books. So I won't have a ton to say about all these beautiful picture books because we haven't yet read them, but I want to tell you how I chose them, why I chose them, and how they're going to end up in our homeschool. So I actually did read this book to my children last night, and this one is this wonderful little adventure about a fox who has lots of questions that he wants answered, and he is seeking them on board this ship, and hopefully he finds adventure on the way. And I chose it primarily because of the beautiful illustrations. So sometimes that is what drives me in purchasing books, is that I just love exposing my children to this beautiful artwork. If it's not beautiful but the content is amazing, then I'll probably still purchase it as well. But I really don't like silly picture books that don't have great content, and just, you know, I'm not one for a lot of computer animation unless it's really stellar, and so I won't usually pick those ones up. So this one's called The Antlered Ship, and by the way, the cover is also really nice. It's just really nice quality, and I do try to get hardback books as often as I can. Owls, Strange and Wonderful, Scorpions, Strange and Wonderful, and Cicadas, Strange and Wonderful are all they're all purchased because we recently got Octopuses, Strange and Wonderful from the library as part of our ocean main lesson block, and I really loved the way that it presented the information. The illustrations were beautiful, and the beginning pages of the story, or of the book, had a story that kind of captivated your attention and then took you into more of the information behind whatever topic that, the book was about. And so I really liked the way that it was presented. So we had checked out the book from the library, and then I added it to our wish list. So we already purchased Octopus's Strange and Wonderful and Penguin's Strange and Wonderful, and then these three, and I believe there might be one more book in the series, but I just love the way they are presented. I love the information, and I of course love the illustrations. They're really beautiful. And so the way that we'll use these books are for our upcoming nature units. And so I haven't decided what specific topic areas we're going to do in the spring. I know that we do have a physics unit that we want to do, but we'll also include a smaller nature unit, and these books will end up in that. Summer Birds, The Butterflies of Maria Marian. Now, this book, along with a lot of the books that you're going to see shortly, are biographies about women. And once I found a couple, I ended up just adding more and more to my wish list. So thank you, Amazon, for all of your great suggestions. And for other customers who viewed similar books and those suggestions were made available, because it really allowed me to find a lot of books that I would not have otherwise known to look for. And so this doesn't make up a specific unit necessarily, but I have collected a number of books about different female figures from the past, and I am looking forward to reading these to all of my children, not just to my daughter. And so you're going to see a lot more of these kinds of picture books. The Wolf, the Duck, and the Mouse. This book, let me tell you, this story is about a mouse and how he got swallowed up by a wolf, and who he met down its belly and what happened after that. I mean, how could you not want to read a story like that? It's just kind of absurd and like totally captivating. So, and the pictures, the illustrations are really kind of nice and kind of unique and a little different. And I don't know, I just anticipate that we're going to have a lot of fun reading this book. So this book is going to end up in our winter reading basket. And I don't exactly have a winter reading basket, but I do have a winter themed unit, and this book is going to be in that. And then this one by Owen Davey, it's called Smart About Sharks, and I love the illustrations. Look how gorgeous these are. And this one caught my eye because we just finished our main lesson block, our ocean main lesson block, and I found that I was struggling to find resources that were beautiful and that presented the information in a way that that was captivating for my children. And so this one for me feels like a living book. And I want to show you that it kind of is reminiscent to the Botanicum book and the other books by Katie Scott. It has kind of that same kind of vintage feel to the illustrations. And so when I saw that, I wanted to get it as well. We have Wee Sister Strange, and I got this book primarily for the beautiful illustrations. Look at that. This book is going to be part of our winter themed unit, so I'll be able to tell you a little bit more about it when we do the review for that unit. And then we have Sam and Dave Dig a Hole, and it is about Sam and Dave digging a hole, and they will not stop until they find something spectacular. And they're digging a hole, and they do indeed find something spectacular. So I thought this would be fun. Then we have Alpha Animals, A to Z. And this book is, A through Z animals and the illustrations that accompany them. And we have a couple of books like this, and this is going to work well when we do our formal introduction of the letters in grade 1 for our Waldorf curriculum. All right, let's move on to some more of these beautiful picture books. This one's called The Little Gardener by Emily Hughes, and I actually did read this last night with my children, and the illustrations are delightful. The storyline is really charming and cute, and it's a book that's easy to read. It doesn't feel like you're as a parent, having to read picture books over and over again, it can get tedious, and this one does not seem like that at all because there's so much to captivate your attention, so many beautiful illustrations, and the story is really simple and quick. The Moose Belongs to Me by Oliver Jeffers. This is also another book that we actually read last night, and it's a charming story. It is so cute, and I really like the illustrations, and I like how they're kind of there's a bit of silly parts throughout it. I don't know. My kids and I really enjoyed it. And the illustrations are, towards the end, they look like oil paintings. They're really beautiful. And then there's a lot of whimsy in it, which I really like. Malala's Magic Pencil. Okay, I think this is the last book that we actually already read. I did pull a stack of books to read to my children last night. This is a beautiful book. I highly, highly recommend it. It is based on a true story, and it's just beautiful. And it's also rather recent. And so if you get a chance to own this one, I highly recommend it, or at least go ahead and check it out from the library. It's about a little girl who basically changes the course of education for her little town using her voice primarily. And it really, I feel, can empower young children, both girls and boys, to feel like they have a voice in this world. And it's also beautifully illustrated. She Persisted. This one's about 13 American women who changed the world. And so I think you can see a theme growing here. And this one has basically little snippets about these 13 women, which I hope would inspire the reader to dive into a few of these women with more research and more books. And so I really like that this kind of gives you a snippet of all these women. And of course, it's also beautifully illustrated. Poet of Science, Ada Lovelace. This is the story of the first computer programmer. So again, we have some more picture books about female role models and with really funny, whimsical illustrations. I'm really looking forward to reading these books. All right, let's move on. We have more picture books. And this one is called Women in Science, 50 Fearless Pioneers Who Changed the World. And this one is similar to the other book in which it showcased 13 women. This one showcases 50. The illustrations are a little bit different. It's a little bit cluttered here, and you can see that it has a bit more content. So this would be a great resource for a bit more information about these different women. And also, I think it would be a really great asset to a unit on female role models. You could read one section every day, or you could pull different women depending on the subject area that you're studying. For instance, this one is about a fossil collector and paleontologist, Mary Anning. And so we are in the middle of our mineralogy unit. So this would be a great way to add a human component to the information that we're studying that would otherwise be a little bit dry. So you could use this in a number of ways. We have Dorothea's Eyes, and I have two picture books about Dorothea Lange, and she is a photographer who photographed images during the Great Depression. We have Grace Hopper, Queen of Computer Code, and this one is quite a thick picture book with a lot of information. I'm really excited about this one. A little bit of a different kind of illustration that I would normally go for, but here's the thing is that I feel like the illustrations really match the way that a story is written. So if you're always looking for those masterpieces, then you might miss out on some stories that are written in a more whimsical way. And so I'm looking forward to reading this book. Caroline's Comets, A True Story. This is going to work well for both the unit that I want to do. It's not really a unit, but it's a focus that I want to do on female role models, but also this will work well for our astronomy unit that's coming up. Since we homeschool with multiple ages, it's really important that I have a variety of resources available for our units because I am dealing with really young kids as well as older elementary. And so having books like this is going to help with my younger students so that they've got something that they feel is for them while we're doing the unit. And the perk as well is that my older students never pass up a good book, a picture book, a read aloud, whatever it is, until they hit high school, and then it all kind of changes after that. So having this means that an 11-year-old may not want to sit down and read a picture book, but if he's sitting down next to his 6-year-old sister, then it's totally legitimate that he can sit and look at a picture book. And so that's why I like having that variety within our homeschool. Margaret and the Moon, How Margaret Hamilton Saved the First Lunar Landing. Again, positive female role models, and this will work well with our astronomy unit. And then we have Look Up. This is a story of Henrietta Leavitt, pioneer woman astronomer. And so this, again, will work well for that astronomy unit that we have coming up. All right, so let's go through this last stack of picture books. We're making our way through. So this is, I think, the only one of two paperback books that we have. All of the other ones are hardback. I really prefer the hardback as often as I can if they're available. This one's Rachel Carson and her book that changed the world. And I do not know much about this book yet, but I will definitely let you know after we do a review on it. So I'm not sure where this book is going to end up. It looks like, oops, that page wasn't cut properly. No big deal. I can use my X-Acto knife and cut that. It seems like this one would have worked well with our ocean main lesson block, but we will be reading that as well. Dorothea Lange. So this is the other picture book that I have on the photographer that photographed images of the Great Depression. And then we have Solving the Puzzle Under the Sea. Maria Tharp maps the ocean floor. And this also would have been good for our ocean main lesson block. And I think it would work well for a spring unit as well. I tend to do our sciences in the spring, even though we're in a science unit right now. But in general, I try to save those units for the spring. And of course, this will go well with the female role models. For the Right to Learn, this is similar to Malala's Magic Pen. This is her story. And so I'm glad that I've got two picture books that deal with the same story and the same content. That's always, for me, a huge winner because you get to see it. You get to see the information again or from a different perspective, and that's always a positive thing. Rosie Revere, Engineer. I love the illustrations for this one. Look how awesome they are. Just super, just whimsical and fun, especially for, you know, an engineer, which you think would be, well, let's not stereotype, but anyway, awesome illustrations. I'm really looking forward to reading this, and I hope that it's one that we read often. You know, my children have their preferences for sure. Life in the Ocean, the story of oceanographer Sylvia Earle. And again, this would have worked well for an ocean main lesson block, which we just did, and also for female role models. So, good book. I Dissent, Ruth Bader Ginsburg makes her mark. And this one has some awesome illustrations. And also, I don't know if other people are really into the actual quality of the paper and the book itself, but I really like this kind of paper. It's thick and it's matte, and I like the illustrations, and it's hardback, and that's something that I really go for. Here's something. If we're going to read a book a lot, I'll go ahead and take off the dust cover and put that aside just so that it doesn't get damaged. And then if we're, or, you know, I can just put them all aside and just leave the books like this in our bookcase. But sometimes the covers of the books don't have the same beautiful illustrations as the dust cover, but that is something, because these will get damaged so easily and quickly no matter how careful you are. Astronaut Scott Kelly, My Journey to the Stars. So this is, I think, one of the only biographies that I have that's not on a woman, but when I saw some of the pictures for this book, I immediately wanted to have it. And it's a picture book on a biography, so that's a win in my book. This book has photographs within the book, and then it has these beautiful illustrations. So I really like the way that this book has been made. So in general, I'm not really interested in the biographies that are geared towards maybe 1st to 4th grade, the kind that have the really large print. They have a few pictures. They just seem dry. They just, for me, they don't feel inspiring at all. This one seems to deliver the same content in a really inspiring way, and it still manages to get those real life photographs within the book. I love the way this book is designed. I think it's such an innovative way to present a picture book, and I'm really looking forward to reading this one. And it'll work well for our astronomy unit. Shark Lady, the true story of how Eugene Clark became the ocean's most fearless scientist. Again, this would have worked really well with our ocean main lesson block. I do have that curriculum available And you can find more details about that in the description box below. These books are going to make it into that curriculum. Even though we didn't use them, we're going to read them, and I'm going to place them within the curriculum where they're appropriate, because when you can have beautiful illustrations and lively content that presents information that would otherwise be dry in a story format, that's just golden when it comes to education. And look at these illustrations, just magnificent. Love it. All right, we have Ada Byron Lovelace and the Thinking Machine. So this again is the story, I believe, about the first computer scientist. And so again, two picture books about the same content. Again, I really love that. If there were more, if you know of more about any of the picture books that I've already presented, I would love to hear your recommendations down in the comment section below. Swimming with Sharks, The Daring Discoveries of Eugene Clark. Again, same story about the same person, but different picture book, different take on it. Beautiful illustrations. Really, it just feels like you're at the bottom of the ocean with these illustrations. Just gorgeous. The Girl Who Thought in Pictures, the story of Dr. Temple Grandin. This is about a woman who had autism, and she's just an amazing scientist. So the pictures totally aren't ones that I would typically go for, but because this was another biography about a positive female role model, I went ahead and got it. And then I have The Amazing Travels of Ibn Battuta. This is I have a couple of books actually in this haul about Ibn Battuta. We're going to be doing our Middle Ages unit, and in addition to the resources that I have for the European area of the Middle Ages, I also am collecting resources for other parts of the world during that time. And so we have Ibn Battuta, and that's going to work well with our Silk Road mini unit that's going to accompany our Middle Ages unit. All right, so let me put these books aside and grab the last stack. All right, here's the last stack of books. We have The Travels of Ibn Battuta. This is going to be a resource guide for me. I plan to read this ahead of time and then present it to my children, or if I don't have enough time to read this ahead of time, I'll just read this aloud to my kids. And the other option is just to assign this to a student. I would call this high school level. My 11-year-old could read this, but I don't think that he'll find it as easy of a read as some of the other books that he enjoys. I have a number of books by the Who Was series. I love this series. It is awesome. I love it for a lot of reasons. They're short books. They're easy to read. You can read them in no time. The print is large. It has illustrations in it. The illustrations are just black and white. They look like ink or pencil drawings. The content is so good because it takes sometimes a really broad story, a broad subject area, or somebody's entire life, and it breaks it down into the highlights, the most important pieces that you're going to need, so that by the end of it, you really know about what it is that you're reading, rather than getting a really thick book that has a lot of additional information, superfluous information. It goes on tangents. It's just too hard for a child to stay like, what is the actual part of the book that I need to know? These books just take out everything that is going to be extra and just leaves you with great content. So you may prefer to have a lengthier book with a lot of extra details, then these books would not be for you. These are great as independent readers. Like if you've got a fourth grader, I would say maybe this is third or fourth grade level, I'm not sure actually, then your child could read this on his or her own. However, because I like these so much, I try to incorporate them into our read aloud so that I can read them as well. I don't use these books as resource material where I'm going to read it and then present it to my children. They're so well written. I really want to be able to read these aloud or to give them to my children. So I forgot to read you all the titles, but these are all females, biographies about women. Ibn Sina, A Concise Life. This again is going to work with our Middle Ages unit. I don't know much about this book. It seems like it's an easy read, but again, I'll give you a complete review at the end of that Middle Ages unit. Ibn Sina's Medicine. I should have known, but this is not exactly what I was expecting. I was hoping for more of a biography, but this is actually literally the translation of the work that he did in the 11th century. And so this is like amazing to have this today, but I think I needed more of a biography on his life, which I'm going to look for. So the next 3 books I have are poetry books, and this first one called Joyful Noise I learned about from Lindsay over at Mama Smooge Reviews. She had presented this book about maybe 6 months to a year ago, and I'd actually had it in my cart for several months, and then I forgot who actually recommended this book, so I'm glad that she reminded me. And this is poetry for 2 voices, which is really neat. I hadn't even considered this as something that we could do within our homeschool. When we do poetry, I'm usually the one reading it unless my children are memorizing it. But when they're memorizing it, we're usually doing it as a group, and I will read it aloud and then they will repeat rather than them looking at the book and reading it to themselves. But this is an opportunity for either 2 students, or if you're a homeschooler, it could be the parent and the student reading each of these different lines aloud. So I think that's a really neat way to do poetry. Messing Around on the Monkey Bars and other school poems for 2 voices. So again, this has the same type of poems where you are doing them with 2 people. And these ones are all about school, which is kind of cool. So I read through a couple of them already, and they're kind of fun. They're not heavy. It's great for students, you know, who maybe don't want the heavier poetry, but still you want to introduce poetry. I think this will be really great. A Visit to William Blake's Inn, Poems for Innocent and Experienced Travelers. I love that. So this one's really beautifully illustrated, and it has poems as well. And so I look forward to doing this as either part of Poetry Tea Time or a poetry unit. I'm not sure if we're going to incorporate these into our daily poems. I have different books for that. But we've only done a poetry unit, like a unit study, only one time in all of our years of homeschooling, but it was awesome. I loved it, and I wish I would have done that more throughout our homeschooling years. The Curious Nature Guide. This is similar to some of the other nature books that I've purchased recently. Let me see if I can show you. It kind of reminds me of Nature Anatomy. You can kind of see that the illustrations are kind of similar, and it presents about the same amount of content. And so when I found this one and a couple other ones that kind of relate to this subject area, I saw this cover and it's just so gorgeous. So I went ahead and got it. Here's there's good things and there's positive and not so positive things about a book like this. Let's talk about the positives first. I love the photographs and the illustrations. And since we do so much drawing in our homeschool with part of our unit studies and our main lesson blocks, having a book like this is really going to help if you don't really know how to draw, you don't really know where to get the inspiration. Seeing some little hand drawings like this, like pencil drawings or color pencil drawings, is really going to help you if you want to copy these into your main lesson book. The only problem with a book like this is that since it covers such broad subject areas, you're usually not getting a whole lot of content for each of these different subject areas. And if you only want a little bit, then this is fine. Sometimes when we're actually going to focus on a particular topic area, because this one covers so much, if we're going to cover astronomy, for instance, there's not enough in this book to work with an astronomy unit or to get reference material to create your own unit. And that's sometimes what I'm looking for when I'm getting books like this. So this one is great for a surface, like a general information, and for illustrations and drawing inspiration. But if you wanted more information about those topic areas, I have another book that I highly recommend. It's called The ABCs of Nature, and you can check that out in a recent book haul. And I've used it a lot in my most recent unit studies and main lesson blocks because it has a tremendous amount of information for all of the different topic areas. It's huge. It's a really big book. But the photographs are a bit dated. I think it was from the 1980s, but that's okay. The information is still totally relevant. Let me put these aside and show you Wild Animals of the North. And we finished our ocean main lesson block, and we had covered animals in the North Pole as well as the South Pole, and this would have worked really well for it. These drawings are just gorgeous. The paper is thick and it's matte, and I really like the illustrations. And there's just a little bit of information about each of these. So again, not a tremendous amount of content. If you were looking for a lot more, then you'd probably want to pick up a book on just the particular animal that you're studying. Otherwise, this makes a really great daily read aloud if throughout an entire unit. If you're doing a unit on animals, then you might choose to read like 1 or 2 of these pages every day as just a way to start your main lesson as kind of a part of your morning activities. This next one is called A Visual Compendium of Wonders from Nature. This is for the natural world. This again has those beautiful illustrations that I really like. It kind of has that vintage feel to it, and of course it has information. This is one of those books that also covers a broad range of subject areas and has more content than the other ones that I've shown you, but I'm not sure if this is enough to be reference material. It may be. It looks like there's quite a bit, and of course the illustrations are magnificent. These will probably be reviewed in the spring after our nature units. This one is called Maps, and it is really similar to, let me pull them out here. We have Botanicum and Historium, and actually I thought they were all by the same author and illustrator, but this one is not, and Historium is not. But let me just show you Botanicum really quickly. This one is by Katie Scott and Kathy Willis. And these ones have those beautiful kind of vintage illustrations, and it seems like a nice amount of information. And this one has that same kind of feel to it. And look at, oh, you could just sit and look at these drawings all day long. They look like just so much fun to look at. Not a lot of information. This is a visual presentation for like an atlas. Botanicum, since we did get the Botanicum book as well as the activity book, I also had in my cart the poster book. It just came separately from that previous book haul. And this one is fantastic. The posters are nice and big. It's on some really nice heavy paper. There's color on one side, and then when you flip it over, it's black and white with the different names of all of the things that you saw on the previous side. And it's perforated, so you could remove these and you could hang them up in your schoolroom or in your classroom. You could also laminate them, and then the children could identify them and write with a marker on them, and then they could self-check their answers, and then they could wipe it off since it was on, like if it was laminated. So really, really beautiful book. Oh my, I think we're to the last book already. Look at this. This one is called Historium. It's part of the Welcome to the Museum series. It has these beautiful illustrations, and it has content. I'm not sure how much this is going to be, but we are going to be doing a couple of history units. We have ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and so I'll be able to tell you about those sections of this book coming up in the review for those units. Okay, I'm going to reveal the price, but I first want to tell you that I went ahead and I put all of these books into a little document for myself so I knew which books I was ordering when. It has the links to all of the books. So this is available to you if you want. For more information, you can check the description box below if you want to add these to your wish list. Okay, so for all of these books that we ordered, including that previous haul that had these books in it, the total was about $1,400. So that is a tremendous amount of money, I know, and if it weren't for our educational funding, there is no way I could buy 10% of these books. So what I recommend is that if these books are on your wish list, you can do a number of things. Some of them, definitely, they're at the library and you can check them out. If you find that you're checking them out often, maybe it's time that you add them to your cart rather than your wish list. With books like these ones here that you might just read for a unit and you might not refer to often, I recommend going in with a couple of friends, maybe a co-op, and each of you buying a couple of books and then trading them amongst you. However, these are readily available at the library, so you might skip doing that with these books. But some of these other books, If they're not available at the library, I'm not really sure which ones would and wouldn't be, but I'm guessing that the ones on the Waldorf education, like the Waldorf books that I showed you at the beginning of this video, those ones might be a little bit harder to find at a library. And so those ones might be ones that you rotate amongst your group of friends or your co-op or your homeschool group. So if you want to check out some of the main lesson blocks that we have done recently, I have included our botany main lesson block, our ocean main lesson block, and our astronomy main lesson block. And if you want to see what we're up to on a daily basis, don't forget that you can find me on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.